that corporate job is just a prison. You'll never be happier than when you're living your dream as an entrepreneur, in my opinion. The issues I've honed in on is influencers, way or another involved in content creation or being an influencer.
Hi, this is John Joseph Checky Jr., CPA, CFP, right here with JJ and Brian. And Brian, help us pronounce your last name properly.
Sure, it's Bleifeld.
Brian, what we're doing today is to learn about you, your business, and any stories you'd like to tell us about you and your business. And remember, your mom's not in the audience, so you can make it up as you go along.
Absolutely. So, my name is Brian Bleifeld. I think I wanted to be an entrepreneur from when I was like in the fifth grade. I used to sell pencils and paper out of my backpack and had a wallet full of money when I was a kid. And I,
I'm
I
sorry.
always had I always had that entrepreneurial dream, like lemonade stands, selling candy. I mean, and I also ran into the government a lot because the school didn't like what me and my friends were doing. We had a little cartel selling candy and cookies and everything else, and they didn't like the competition, but I still wanted to make the money. So grew up. Parents weren't really good with money, so I had to get a scholarship to go to school, and so I was going to go into the Navy and do a couple of years in the Navy for them to pay for school. Unfortunately, I got married my sophomore year of college, and the wife didn't like the idea of her new husband being gone 6 months a year. So I decided to leave the Navy in college, pay back my scholarship. And I didn't know what I was going to do at that point because I was already like halfway to a history degree and didn't know what was going to happen. But I knew I liked entrepreneurship. So I took a class in college called The History of Business. It was
Mhm.
cross-listed in the business school and the history school at Texas A&M. Fell in love with accounting as the language of business. And from then, basically started pursuing my accounting classes. I ended up accidentally graduating from Texas A&M in 1997. And I actually took the CPA exam as a history degree person, not having my accounting degree until later. So when I first got into the accounting world, I worked for a small boutique, 800-person international CPA firm. I set up companies around the world. I visited pretty much every continent, and I did that for 11 years. And then I became a specialist in basically getting companies sold. So you would hire me if you wanted to sell your company to a larger company. And I would come in and fix the books and not cook the books, but fix the books, make them presentable, make it
You
to
meant to
where
say clean up the books, right?
exactly. Well, where make it to where KP or EY would come in and want to buy the company,
Uh-huh.
because we had all the financial questions asked and answered. The problem is I kept getting drawn into the acquiring company, and I ended up getting that happened to me a couple of times where the acquiring companies would put in their documents that I had to go with the new company. And so I eventually ended up as the Latin American controller for a publicly traded company called Worley Parsons. So I spent a couple of years in South America and all that stuff.
Did you pick up
Then
the language?
I did not. It's funny. I was married at the time, and they said to pick up Portuguese because I lived in Brazil most of the time, and to pick
Huh.
up Portuguese, you had to have a local girlfriend. And my buddy Tom had a local girlfriend. He picked up the language in 2 months, and 2 years later, I'm still going into every meeting with a translator. But I was able to teach basically the entire public company management structure, how to operate in Brazil, from hydroelectric to rails to solar to nuclear, whatever else. My conference room was my office. And I literally was just all day long teaching people how to do business in Brazil. Then my wife and I were blessed with an adoption, and I couldn't really stay in Brazil when I was adopting a child from the US. So I
Uh-huh.
came back and pretty much started my firm, Bleifeld CPA, and I've had a couple of different iterations and brandings from them. And my latest branding and the niches I've honed in on is called the Confidential CPA. And basically, I hone in on the niches of influencers. Most of about probably over half my clients are in some way or another involved in content creation or being an influencer.
Tell us what on earth an influencer actually is. I remember meeting one of those people in 2018, and she said, "I'm an influencer." I thought, okay.
Literally anybody who makes money independently creating content is what my definition.
Hmm.
So that could range the gamut from a person that goes to thrift stores and buys items and resells them, a person that goes to restaurants all over Texas and reviews the restaurant and makes a really good living that way. It does also include kind of the spicy accountants, adult creators and stuff like that. That was really big during COVID, and a lot of these people got 1099s that they weren't expecting, and they needed somebody that was going to be understanding to them and not embarrass them.
So how do
And
these folks discover you and how do you discover them?
so my first website was basically a personal website called the Kinky CPA. And basically through word of mouth, I got a lot of traction on Instagram. And for about 2 years, I was getting 9, 10 calls a day from people who needed taxes from Instagram. And then Instagram decided that they didn't like that there was a person named the Kinky CPA on their platform, and they deplatformed me. And since then, I haven't really had to advertise or anything like that because I still get 2, 3 calls a day from people who need help. And I'm talked about a lot in Reddit chats and different influencer places where they meet and talk, private places. My name gets bandied around a lot. So starting a year ago, we started offering referral bonuses, like $50 if somebody signs up with your link. And that's basically replaced my entire advertising budget.
So
So
you've learned to master affiliations.
yes, exactly. And the big thing is that you can tell since it's very difficult when you don't want to tell the lady at H&R Block what you do for a living. With me, they know their friends have talked to me, and they know I don't spread rumors outside of class and everything else. So that's worked out pretty well. Now, my other two niches are just internet. Online sellers, and that
Uh-huh.
just comes from my international experience. I have a lot of people who want to come and sell into the US, so I do their back office and payroll and all that. And then the third set is kind of a conflagration of the two because the influencers have all this money and they need to do something with it while it's still there. And so I get them into real estate, and we start investing in real estate and building hard assets from the soft assets.
How fun.
So
So are you licensed in that area as well?
I'm just licensed as a CPA, and actually, except for the being able to go against tax courts and anything else, most of my business could be done without using a CPA firm. I do it because if I ever do need to do audits or reviews or something like that, I can still do that. But my bread and butter is helping, small individuals, maybe 1 or 2 employee companies comply with all their needs at a price point which fits them plus fits me. So I'm not the cheapest person in the market. I turn
Mhm.
down probably 30 or 40% of the people who want to work with me, but I'm also not as expensive as KPMG or something like that. So we have a sweet spot. I don't want to grow too much. I just want to keep my office manager and myself busy, 45 hours a week, and just work with people I want to. You know, we don't deal with assholes. We kick them out. And we're also real big into, we read the latest books. Like right now, we're going through 24 assets
I
and
want to thank
not
you very much for mentioning that book to me. I've started listening to that as well. It's quite magical.
It's it's replacing Atomic Habits is my favorite business book
Mhm.
for right now.
On also a very good book, and I've started it as well, so thank you for the recommendation.
I actually gave away at my party this weekend, I gave away a couple of copies of Atomic Habits because it's like such a life changer for especially us with the ADHD who have problems, keeping on track with things.
Do you have any favorite stories you'd like to share about your practice or one of your favorite client stories?
Sure. So I guess my most outstanding feather in my cap, I can say, was when between my this client's fiance and we convinced her to quit her $100,000 nursing job to go full time into influencer, being an influencer. And for years, like literally for a year, she was doing it part time, stressing herself out. And literally, we had to get on a conference call and say, "Look, we see what you do in 20 hours. Let's see what we can do in 40 hours." And literally, she went from making 90K at the side business to over 400K. And she I I I can't charge her enough because she's always she's always pimping me out to all her friends. And then B, she is just so thankful that she doesn't have to have a 9 to 5 job anymore. She literally gets to go and review restaurants and get $40,000, $50,000 checks. And it's
So
pretty
what
crazy.
prevents you from becoming an influencer yourself?
I'm on my way to do that as well. I'm very extroverted. I love being in front of the camera. The main thing is I went through a 25-year marriage where I gained, no matter how much I made, I had no financial traction. So it's only been since I was able to separate from that and try to rebuild myself from scratch that I've really been able to.
So tell us how someone has a flourishing business, a long-standing relationship, and has no traction in terms of financially. How does that happen?
My marriage was a complete disaster. Not a lot you can go into. I mean, I guess I'm pretty open about everything. It was just a very toxic relationship. I pretty much knew it was over after about 10 years. But I didn't believe in divorce, so we stayed together 25. So, and it was a long, drawn out divorce process. It took 5 years to get divorced. Even after we were divorced, we still tried to work together in the same business, which is never a good idea. I always say the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. So I lived that pretty intensely. And the thing is once she finally decided we were going to get divorced, she went to law school, she got her CPA license, and she has actually just acquired 2 new CPA firms. So she decided that, I always thought she was smarter than I was, and now she's proving it with the drive and ambition. And I think before she was just content letting somebody else do all the work and was afraid that she would never be able to catch up. Because my career was pretty spectacular in when I was in the corporate world. I went from straight out of school to the top of, the top, 1% of earners pretty quickly. And she thought she could never compete with that. So why try? So
So I
after
just
20,
decided to have a great lifestyle and spend as much money as humanly possible before anybody would notice. Sure.
exactly. And she knew I didn't believe in divorce. So she knew that she didn't have to control herself in any way because no matter what happened, we weren't going to get divorced. And then it took a lot of therapy, a lot of therapists telling me you have to get divorced or we're not going to work with you anymore. Because it was a pretty toxic relationship.
So now that you're happily divorced,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to folks rather than live through a toxic relationship, Brian?
I have had more good times in the last 6 years than I did the previous 25 to that. Life is too short not to live. Life's too short to work. Even the greatest corporate job, being your own hamburger stand is better, in my opinion, than having a great corporate
As long as
job.
you have ADD and slightly dyslexic and very adventurous and don't need a steady paycheck, I couldn't agree with you more.
I believe steady paycheck. I think it was who was it that said that the golden handcuffs just keep you there. Once you make a certain amount of money in a corporate job, you can't leave. And I have a lot of recovering corporate because of my connections to the engineering world. I have a lot of recovering corporate people who, now run barbershops or run, wood companies that they sell wood to Gibson guitars and all these things that they took the, multipliers they were providing to the corporate world, found a niche and started doing themselves. And most of them don't make as much money as they did in corporate. I don't make as much money as I did in corporate, but the quality of life and everything else is just far outweighs the money. Oh,
The re-
it was
Sounds like the return on life exceeds the need for a return on investment.
exactly. Who's the Shark Tank guy that used to own the Mavericks?
Mark
Sure, Mark
Cuban.
Cuban.
Yeah, Mark Cuban said he would rather make $70,000 as a sole proprietor than $700,000 as a corporate CEO. And I totally believe that.
Almost everybody who is very, very, very rich, and he certainly qualifies, always tells you to follow your heart since they already made their own money being miserable
Exactly.
for a number of time. Yeah, which is like, oh yeah, really?
They don't ever talk to the failures like
Yeah.
4/5 of businesses don't last year.
So
Well,
in
Bri-
terms of your business, talk about your greatest success and your greatest failure.
My greatest success would be still a work in progress. I'm trying to I think I define success differently than most people. I mean I drive a 20-year-old car. I have a very modest house. I don't really I'm not really money driven. My success is my client's success. I want all these people that, get ripped off by other accounting firms and CPAs to come to me. And also I've developed these skills over the last 20 years where for me it's second nature and easy, but for other people it'd be very difficult. So all my clients that I basically put them into small corporations, small S corps, they never they couldn't describe what's going on. They just know that their taxes are $7,000 to $8,000 less at the end of the year, and that they have a W-2 that they can go to the mortgage company and get a mortgage and get a car loan and stuff like that. And literally every time I talk to a client, within the first 5 minutes, they when they first call in, they're very ill at ease. They're scared of the IRS. They don't know what to happen. And by the end of the call, they're joking and laughing, and it's like, oh yeah, I had two other calls scheduled, but I don't need to have any of them. And that's what really makes me happy. So I want to get about another 100 or $200,000 of top line revenue in, and I'll basically stop taking clients and just service the clients I have.
How fun. And do you also, in addition to the real estate, do you help them actually accumulate wealth within their corporations?
Yes. So what I've done now is, like discussed before, is like we always turn them into real estates, and then we're really interested now that we have some higher net worth individuals. Because also, once you get with me and you start treating your side job as an actual business, it always expands. Like I don't have any clients I think that actually have reduced their revenue
Uh-huh.
since they worked with me because I put them in the right mindset. Very, coach like and like, okay, we need to discuss this. You need to, how much content you're creating, what are we doing in these ways? Once they get there, they're actually having wealth that they need to figure out what to do with. So the
Uh-huh.
easiest thing is to buy real estate. We also are, if you're not into real estate, and also I think the real estate may be overvalued right now, find out whatever kind of assets you want to get into
Uh-huh.
and figure some way to my best goal for my clients is to get them in some type of Roth vehicle, whether
Mhm.
it's through a Roth back-end conversion or a Roth, some other way to where we can get that money to start growing tax free.
Tax
That's
deferred and come out tax free. That is
exactly.
basically a strategy we've used at Checky Financial since about 1988 on, because when you're a certified public accountant and you're trying to help people preserve their wealth, we can't say I have no idea the tax impact.
Yep.
So yeah, we're
Oh no,
designed.
you could have the greatest returns in the world, and if you're paying 45% taxes, what's the point?
And since we're both blessed living in not California, but Texas, the land of the free and no tax, it's like the kids who play for the Knicks discovered they're really happy they won their championship game in San Antonio, since there was a
That's
lot less
funny.
tax impactful for them to win that championship in San Antonio than it
Yep.
would have been had they done it in the city of New York.
Yeah, just like the quarterback in the Super Bowl last year lost money on playing the Super Bowl because of the amount of wages subject to taxes in California cost him more than he actually made.
Hmm.
I'd like
Wow.
to see that. I'd like to see that math because that has never made any sense to me how you could somehow pay more tax than you actually made in a given circumstance. Yeah, mathematically, that's just because my clients and JJ's clients too, occasionally when they have a big run up, when they've had an independent account for a period of time, complain about having to take a gain. You're thinking, okay, I will buy all the dollar bills you'll sell me at 26 cents each. We can start right now.
I remember that realization when I was in college where because everybody talks about, oh, I'm in a higher tax bracket. And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, higher tax bracket means they take the entire income times it by
Hmm.
that higher tax bracket. But no, it's a layer cake. Once you get above that certain layer, it's above. And then I remember my father-in-law was talking about that, and I was like, well, that's not really how it works, mathematical wise. But I understand your
Yeah,
concerns.
honest to God, if you've studied income tax for 50 years or so, actually have done tax returns for about 62 years, no kidding. And the average tax rate in this part of the world is somewhere between 19 and 26%, unless you're
Yep.
making gazillions of dollars. And no matter how many times, audience, they revise the tax law, it's just to help you spend your money the way that Congress would like you to spend your money and be scared to in terms of if you ever get a Treasury Department letter with the word Internal Revenue Service underneath it. I check you financially, even though we don't practice as CPAs. We definitely do say to our clients, if you get us a correspondence from the Internal Revenue Service, just call us. It will help you open up the envelope and discover what's actually in there.
Well, and that a
And
lot of my clients have not been compliant with the IRS in many years. And that's a lot of our business is basically going through their tax transcripts, finding out what's going on. And literally, you'll have people that haven't filed in 3 years get a refund. And they're like, oh, I thought I was going to owe a lot of money, but that's not how the tax code works, especially if you have a W 2 job or anything like that.
What's a great time to ask the question? What is one thing in particular that your clients misunderstood about your profession?
What they really don't understand is that, just like John said, the tax code is not designed to bring in money. The tax code is designed to steer behavior. They want you
yeah.
to buy a house. They want you to do X, Y, Z. They want you to have kids. When you actually realize that it's all a big game with the IRS,
Uh-huh.
basically you just have to figure out how to play the game, and then you do it the right way.
Uh-huh.
It's why so many rich people drive ginormous land yachts that weigh over 6,000 pounds
Yep, yep.
when they have a good year.
Well, and then also you have to like I've had a couple, when I used to do a lot of corporate small businesses, trucking companies and stuff like that, which I don't do anymore. Basically, they would use the depreciation every year on their trucks. And after 10 years, they've got 20 trucks built up and all the depreciation's been used. But of course, all the operating costs and everything of having those trucks. So the next year after that last truck falls off the profit reels, they have all this profit they never knew what to do with before because they never paid taxes before because they always just depreciated their large truck. So
Uh-huh.
it's always like sometimes it's better to take that deduction over 5 to 7 years than to take it all in year one.
What we commonly do is if the CPA doesn't have a planning background, is
Yeah.
we'll say to our clients,
Uh-huh.
if it wouldn't break your heart, I'm happy to sit down with you and your CPA. No kidding. And kind of go over some stuff. Because we do a lot of financial analysis of financials because I spent 20 years as a budget director for various companies, little ones and big ones. And I know how to read the tea leaves in terms of that. And since you and I and JJ both have or all have great senses of humor, we can tell somebody, there's actually an easier way to do this if you don't mind paying less taxes.
Also
Unless you
goes
just
to
enjoy bitching about taxes.
into a point that you made a minute ago, Brian. It's also how you set up the accounts and the investments as well, businesses for that matter, but the impact of how things are established, which impacts the taxes short term and long term as well.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with restricted stock.
For sure.
That's what's gonna actually really propel a lot of my clients into a really rarefied wealth position is when they basically have non-tradable stock that we get to revalue down because the
Mhm.
non-tradability do the Roth conversion, and then when they do actually have a sale or come up or whatever else, where we actually properly value that, they're gonna get that money into tax-free vehicles on pennies on a dollar. And that's something I've had to learn because, like I said, I'm more of an operational tax and tax and accounting guy. People like you know the ins and outs of,
We've learned to do, all kidding aside, is number one, even though our clients say, oh, we know you know everything. So let me explain something to you. You know who to ask the right questions to? Because we have a battery of, well, you hired him. Go, yes, we only hire that guy.
yep.
And when
Yeah,
he
my
gets
like
stuck, we ask them, who do you call when you're stuck?
yeah, my ex-wife does pretty much I outsource all my tax controversy to her because she'll fight the IRS and that same way we were married, she makes the IRS's life hell. And she's actually in law school at South Texas College of Law right now. And she's basically as a second year law student running the taxpayer assistance clinic down there and literally getting to go in front of the tax court every time she's in town. So, and also we have a lot of Facebook groups, tax preparer, Quaker groups, entrepreneurial accounting takes it groups. And I'll give any other CPA or any other tax firm an hour of my time for free because hey, whenever I was going up and switching from corporate to accounting, I had people that did that for me. But this is not a This is not a zero-sum game. The pie is unlimited
Mhm.
on amount of potential there is for tax work and everything else. I do a lot of people will come to me and they get an IRS notice that says they filed their taxes wrong, and when I look at their taxes, I'm like, "Who filed this?" And they're like, "Well, I did it myself." Anybody who's making more than $400,000 a year that's
Ooh.
doing their own taxes, I can guarantee they're doing it, probably 20% are doing it wrong where they're underpaying and 80% are doing it wrong where they're overpaying. Like, for example, he had his real estate business set up as an SSS2B, uh, you know, uh, like an engineering firm. And I'm like, no, 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 you actually get to take all the advantages of the tax code for this business. And he's like, well, I just clicked a button I saw on TurboTax. I'm like, okay, you saved yourself $400, you cost yourself 12,000. Good job.
Mm.
So the
It
return
is,
on investment,
and that's a traditional engineering story.
that's true. That is one thing I no longer, so after working for engineers for 20 some odd years, I no longer take engineers as clients because they think they know how to do my job better than I do. And I just let them do that themselves anymore.
We have any number of engineering clients because about 30 years ago, I learned from another entrepreneurial type who's also analytical that you cannot out analytical an analytical. So about all you can say to an analytical is you cannot make a mistake. I know your number one fear on earth is making a mistake. So what we do is we revise things on a constant basis. You cannot screw this up. However, there's a whole bunch of stuff we both know that you're pretending you know how to do. And I know no one ever said that to you in your whole life, but I boxed in the Army during the Vietnam War and fought in black belt tournaments in Texas and Oklahoma, and I did stand-up comedy too. So I'm a real
Oh,
natural born
nice.
smart aleck. That being the case, we can help you if you don't mind not paying so much taxes and corresponding with the Infernal Revenue Service.
So how are you guys in your business developing your client list and reaching out to new people? Is it all referral
JJ
or are
really
you
enjoys networking, so I'll turn that over to you, Jay.
Well, I'll rephrase really what I'm doing now, which is one, strategically reaching out to people. Say, I mean, literally today, instead of naming companies on this one, but reached out to a specific company with a tech connection to University of Texas at Austin, my alma mater. Similar years though, I started in '97, graduated '01, so it was a
okay?
similar time frame as you, Brian, but obviously at Texas instead of A&M. So very strategically reaching out to certain people groups that I have a connection with and I can provide particular value to. So that's one avenue. Another one is I call in real life. So whether that's my son and wife's school, whether that's coming and going through the airport on a business trip where I ran into a high school classmate from 30 years ago who just retired in his late 40s. So it's just interesting if you're open to who you run into in the conversations you have. There's definitely a lot of opportunity if you just stop long enough to listen. So there are a couple ways that we're reaching out to people in addition to the other professionals that we work with a common client, a high net worth client, and working into the ultra high net worth client, that we can have these type conversations where they get it. They understand the value of working with another professional, whether that's be tax strategy, estate planning, and other things along those lines of just the importance of having your right team that you have access to and working together to complement one another to be able to put that whole piece of the puzzle together ultimately so they can have more money and pay less taxes.
Well, probably similar to you guys, we try to at least get a 5x return on their investment. So if they're going to pay me
Mhm.
$1,400, I want them to have 5 times that in return on their tax savings. And people don't understand if you're working and doing the things that your CPA tells you to do, and you're operating in a business-like manner, it shouldn't cost you anything. It should just, they should pay themselves over
Yes.
many times. And with your things, it's even bigger because you have such a leverage on your client's money to where your fee is dwarfed by what the returns, not just the
I'll
tax
tell you one of
savings, but the
my favorite
returns.
stories on that. One of my clients who's another smart aleck from New Jersey years ago said, "We want to make sure that we're making more money from our account than you are." I said, "Okay, Andy, I'm going to go ahead and draw you a chart about how much money you put in, how much money I made, how much money you made. How does that sound?" And I'd made it in 3D with color and what have you, so
Yeah,
they
yeah.
and then I would show that to them each time. And after I did that for a number of years, some other folks copied that, and then compliance said, "You cannot do that anymore." And I thought, I'm thinking that is full disclosure. Why would you not want someone to tell everybody that story? And I used to pull out a
'Cause you're probably
calculator.
making other people look bad.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And I remember doing a seminar for the CFP group nationally where they said, we'd like you to run this meeting. I said, okay, why is that? They said, we were told that you're good at crowd control. And I said, okay, what's the discussion going to be? They said, we want full disclosure for CFPs for the compensation. I said, ma'am, there'll be people dancing on tabletops screaming about that. He said, no, we've gotten some positive feedback. And I said, to whom are you speaking? So they had me record the meeting, and people were dancing on tabletops saying they would all send their certificates back if that's what they wanted them to do. And we've always
Huh.
told people how much money we made because we want them to make sure that they make more money than we do. That's point number one.
Yep.
And point number two, we're not out to pick your pocket. There are much
Oh,
easier ways to be a crook than being a financial advisor.
I did want to bring up something that I've noticed over the last year, especially, and this, I'm not political at all, but since the Trump regime came in, it's palatable how much the IRS is using AI now.
Mhm.
The way the messages are coming in, I mean, I've done this for, 20 years, and the messages are different. What they're looking at is different. I am almost 100% sure that they're using AI to actually figure out what to go after for the biggest bang for the buck.
And they should.
Yeah, well,
If my
exactly,
job
because
is to
if
go
you're
ahead and catch the biggest crook, I'm going to go ahead and use every tool known to mankind. Have a nice day.
exactly, and but I just tell people, like, when people wanna play games and, like, not report their income and don't wanna tell me stuff, I'm like, "Okay, that's not gonna work for me 'cause, I want you to pay as little taxes as possible, but I'm not going to jail with you." And the way
Correct.
the IRS can actually and in my opinion, they're actually looking at bank accounts already. But there's no way that you have not been talked to from the IRS for 7 years, and then all of a sudden they know everything about you and they're sending you a letter saying, "Prove up X, Y, and Z." And I think the interconnectivity of all these things is
So tell
gonna
us if you don't mind.
increase.
You were an entrepreneur basically from birth. So
Yes,
what lessons did your parents teach you that took hold
absolutely
so
none.
quickly?
So I was do the absolute my father, typical born in '49, baby boomer, gave all his life to whatever the company wanted,
Mm,
and then when the times got tough for the company, they just laid him off. But he
Mhm.
still has this mentality that the company is always right. So literally,
yeah.
he's 74 right now. Companies have treated him badly his whole life. He's never had the type of pension or the type of savings or anything like that. And he still has that baby boomer company is always best. It kills them that I'm self-employed. Like, I don't know if it's the jealousy or what, but he always thinks, well, you were doing so good as working for a corporate, you had vacations and everything this. And I'm like, my whole life is a vacation now. I mean, I literally get out from my bedroom, walk 30 feet to my office, and get to deal with clients that I choose all day. And
Mhm.
and that wasn't always the case. When I had, like, plumbers and AC guys and everything else, my life was a living hell as a self-employed person. But now that I deal with the people that I deal with the best, and I have that niche
Mhm.
in, which is that niche is something that nobody else could compete with you in because of your skills and ability, life is good.
And not to correct your math, but if your dad was born in 1948,
49, yep.
49 rather, and you subtract 49 from 2026, he
So he's
might even be
77,
yeah, yeah, pretty much.
76, 77. You
Yeah,
got it.
okay. And every time a CPA does math, I used to have a 96-year-old Sicilian lady client, and I would give her the wrong answer with math just so she'd look at me and say, "I was just checking to see
If you're watching.
if you were really listening."
Gotcha, gotcha.
You see? So, yeah, okay, so we're that detail-oriented even though it seems like we're just having a good time. Looks like your internet has gotten kind of wonky.
No, I think we're good.
We lost the camera. That's what we're wondering what's
Okay,
happening.
they're
Okay.
switching the camera, okay.
Yeah, my dad did tell me 2 things, because my dad worked in the oil field and offshore oil rigs, and he got hurt a lot because he was not very smart. He would get blown off oil rigs and stuff like that, and I remember one time he called me into his bedroom when he was, laid up on, workers' comp or whatever, and he
Mhm.
said, "It's always better to work with your mind than it is with your back." So that did stick with me, and I didn't know it at the time, but my dad only read 4 books the entire time I was growing up. Those 4 books were the, Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit, and he kept reading it over and over again. And so in my mind, my dad was a very literate person and, he gave me the books and everything else. I only found out later in life that those were the only books he had ever read, and it was very shocking to me because I had this idealized version of my dad that he was like the oil guy reading the Hobbit on his trips. So I got really into reading, and I still read every day and everything else like that.
So your dad gave you curiosity, literally,
Yep,
and he told you to don't be like me, work with your mind, not your body, or you'd be better
yep.
off working with your body. But he did have one big thing that really helped you a great deal, in my opinion, is since all kids, with the exception of JJ's 3 perfectly well-behaved teenagers, and there's no sarcasm associated with that comment, since he told you to do one thing, you, like most kids, did the exact opposite thing and became an entrepreneur and a successful entrepreneur and escaped the prison known as corporate life and escaped somehow the golden handcuffs.
Yeah, and then the
So
only other
did take his advice with work with your mind, not your body. So you did definitely
Yep.
run with that one.
Well, and the other thing is, I used to always tell people I might not be the smartest person in the room, but I can outwork anybody. Like when I was in corporate accounting, 20-hour days, I would basically plan all my flights overnight so I would not, I could sleep during the flight and have my work during the day. I don't do that anymore because I think it's kind of counterproductive, but I learned a lot of stuff. I got my 10,000 hours very quickly. So in an engineering firm, of course, everybody has to track every 6 minutes of what they're doing at work. So we kept that rule for the accountants as well. And so at the end of the year, I would always run off my timesheets and compare it to all the other people in the company, and I was always the top, most efficient, most least vacation time and most work hours. And I've since amended that to where I take as much vacation as I ever want now, and I don't feel guilty about it.
So, what's the biggest compliment you've ever received so far, Brian?
I guess the biggest one is you made me believe in myself, is what a lot of clients will
Yeah.
tell me. I'm a very positive guy. Especially because of my history and my how my marriage was, I started doing a lot of manifestation after that, and just I used to always be the guy that's self-deprecating and I'm so bad at everything, and I'm still trying to overcome a little bit of that. But just the power of positivity that I want to
Mhm.
push on people has been like the greatest compliments I've got back.
So, if you had a couple of minutes to promote what you'd really like everybody and their dog to hear about you and your amazing CPA practice and consulting practice, what would you like to be sure and mention clearly and concisely?
Oh, if I could talk to the most people and tell them the one thing is that whatever you're into hobby wise should absolutely be your business. If
Huh.
you're into Smurfs, do Smurfs. If you're into whatever it is, you can make a living doing that thing. I've seen individuals leave Wall Street and Goldman Sachs to open up a clothing company. I've seen students drop out of Rice University to sell clothes that they bought at thrift stores. I've seen all these people, and we get to define our own American dream now. And I think a big part of that needs to be happiness and doing what you love. Because if you do what you love, you're never going to, I mean, it's a cliche, but you're never going to
Mhm.
work. And I mean, that's what I do. Like people like, oh, are you going to build your firm up so you can sell it and retire? And I'm like, why the hell would I want to retire? Except, especially once I got the ability to fire clients, and I had enough clients to where I was happy and I got my rates. And then thanks to my office manager, because she came in and fixed my rates. But once that happened, it's the greatest thing ever.
You just shared a great example also of listening to advice yourself. So when your office manager came to you and said the value that you're providing and what you're charging are incongruent, that you corrected that.
Well, I had about $60,000 of open receivables whenever I hired her, and I really wanted to buy a house. And I'm like, I can't find a loan, I can't get the 20,000 down or whatever. And literally within a month and a half of her getting hired, she had wrangled up about $40,000 in cash that I had basically written off. I wasn't expecting it to get. And she basically gave them no options. It's like, We're either going to not talk to you as clients or you're going to pay these invoices. And very few of them didn't pay. It was just my people pleasing that prevented me from being the hard ass. And she's like, put it
Mhm.
on me. Send the email from my account. We'll deal with it then. And like I had a couple of bar clients that owed me, ten, $15,000 from a couple of years, and they just were slow paying, slow paying. And she's like, well, you're not getting payroll this month, so I don't, I don't know what you want to do. And because I'm such a quote unquote nice guy and I'm always positive and pumping people up, it tends to make me a people pleaser. So I need that outside influence to be able to
Mhm.
overcome that. So I'm so grateful to her. It's the reason I have this house I'm living in now, and it's the reason that I don't work for peanuts anymore.
Only elephants should work for peanuts, pun intended. When it comes to celebrate recovery at churches, people pleasing is a common addiction that people have. I had no idea that that was the case, not being from northern New Jersey, but at any rate, for normal people, that can be a real problem.
Well, I also overcame some extreme weight loss problems. Like at my heaviest, I was over 420 pounds. And when you're that big, everybody has a certain view of you. I mean, I literally had, public company CEOs and CFOs say that I could get really promoted inside the organization if I could run a half marathon. And I was so depressed during my marriage that the weight just kept building up year over year. And then when I adopted my son back in 2011, my doctor fired me because I gained weight after she told me to lose weight. And she's like, I can't help you, Brian. You're just going to die. So literally, it took a long time, but I lost over 200 pounds. And I did it with the, ketogenic diet, eating pound of steak a day. And I never suffered at all when I did this because I ate really well. But I think that mentality of being overweight did color my people pleasing. If you're the fat guy, you have to basically make everybody like you. And whether you have to do that with money, whether you have to do that with doing service for them or whatever else, I still have a lot of that. So I try to take the good pieces of that. Like my friend needs someone to help them move. I'm going to help them move. But I try not to buy cars for people and stuff like that.
You had a client who would open up our meetings with her and simply say, how many cars and houses did you buy since the last time we talked to you for other people?
Well, it's
And
great if
she
you have that money to do, but it's not always the best thing because people get complacent and they get reliant on that.
People who need money always are asking for money. People who give money are always soft touches until they get somebody in their office or in their life going, you can actually get that house. You could actually go to the bar and sit at your table because they can't possibly ever charge you. There's just lots of takeaways from the stories that you just told. So you have a couple of
Absolutely.
tragically interesting stories. One, how to gain weight, be
Yep.
involved in a toxic relationship and be very unhappy. And two, how to lose weight, get out of the toxic situation. Years ago, I had two fat partners. One helped me gain 25 pounds, one 35 pounds, and I came away with never going to lunch consistently with fat people.
Well, we are the sum of the five people we hang out with. So if you want to, be fit or be smart or be rich, hang out in those circles. And that's like probably with JJ with all the networking, he's probably getting in the right rooms. You don't spend time at the bad rooms, and it's not going to rub off with you. It's
Yes.
John Jacob Astor said if he lost everything, what would he do? And he would go, I'd find some way I could hang around rich people because eventually the energy would cause me to become a rich person. So lots of stories about how our consciousness is affected by the people around us, and you're the sum of their abilities.
So, one question folks love asking each other: what advice would you give to your 20-year-old Brian? Brian,
I don't get married.
I'm gonna I'm gonna edit that. Say, don't get married to the wrong person.
There you go. There you go. Literally, basically, stop living for yourself and live for 20 years in the future, Brian. That's what I'm trying to do
Yeah.
now. I'm trying to please, 35 Brian. I don't care about my personal happiness right now. I want to make the future me proud and through manifestation and exercise and whatever else. And that's the only person I'm trying to impress. I mean, like I said, I own 2 cars. The sum value of them is less than $500. And, people I have actually lost job interviews because I show up in a 2002 Silverado, and they're like, "Well, we don't want you to be the corporate controller of this company. Why are you driving a valueless truck?" And I'm like, "Because it gets me to point from A to B, and I don't have to pay for it." And I understand if people like cars or people like watches or nice clothes or whatever else they like, that's their thing. My thing is I have a lot more freedom with my time than those people.
Uh-huh.
Again, that goes back to your return on life idea. Commonly, when I parked my car this weekend, kids said to me, "I really like your watch." And I said, "Yes, I'm actually am a scuba diver, and this is a scuba diving watch, which you can
So it's
normally see."
function over form.
Yeah, it is pretty. However, I've owned it for 23 years and it's been paid for since I bought it 23 years ago. Have a nice day. Sat down next to another CPA who is a diving instructor, not just a dive master like I am. And he also had a fancy schmancy watch that was made for scuba diving. And we both joked about how you had to stay in really good shape in your late 70s to be able to get not only in the water, but get out of the water also while carrying your equipment.
Yep, yep.
So if you had one piece of advice to say to clients that it was your biggest mistake with clients, or the biggest mistake clients made, what would that be?
Uh, Basically not cutting off a toxic relationship with the
Uh-huh.
client soon enough. If a client is slow paying you, there's a reason. They're not seeing the value in what you're worth,
Uh-huh.
and they just need to go away. So they should do that the same to their clients. When I worked for the engineering company, we were a very entrepreneurial engineering company, and if we ever had collections problems, I would basically stand up in the monthly meeting like, "Okay, we're not working for this company and this company anymore." And people were always shocked by that. And I'm like, "These people do not value us. And you can tell they don't value us because they don't pay us." So,
You can pay your bill and your other bills. You can certainly pay us too.
well, I had a client one time say he couldn't pay like a $400 invoice. And he knows I have access to his bank accounts, and there's $78,000 in the bank account. And it had been $78,000 in the bank account for like a year. And I'm like, that's not the person you lie to, but okay.
Once had a client who tried to lie about her age to me. I said, "Ma'am, you can tell me whatever age you like, but we both know I've seen your driver's license. I know the day you were born and where you were born. If you have to live in Fantasy Island, I'm perfectly okay with that since you always drove a Cadillac, unlike the fellow we're talking to now." So congratulations on one, helping people build up their balance sheets, and two, reaching out in so many different areas so that you get smarter as you get older, as opposed to just older.
So my dream car would be an older Mustang, but I want it to be pristine, and I want to have a bumper sticker on it that says, "Don't laugh, it's paid for."
Huh, huh.
Have you ever been in an older Mustang?
I have. I used to have my first car was a 1984 straight six Mustang that I got for $1,400 for my Kroger sacking job, and that car was, oh my god, I got so many speeding tickets in that thing.
Well, I am so old. I remember when the Mustang came out in
Yeah.
1964, and I had a friend named Vinnie Palermo, and I'm not making that up. And I would ride with him in that. And I'm sorry to tell you, at 1964, when that car came out, it was one of the most uncomfortable cars I'd ever been in, and I drove an MGA.
There you go. Well, it was built for
With that, this has been
secretaries.
John and JJ Checky interviewing the most amazing fella we've talked to all day. Brian, he's going to pronounce his last name for us so we cannot possibly mispronounce it.
Bleifeld.
And if you only learn one thing to take away from Brian, he's going to summarize it right now for you in 90 seconds or less.
You're going to live your dream. That corporate job is just a prison. It maybe have nice golden bars and a fluffy bunk, but you'll never be happier than when you're living your dream as an entrepreneur, in my opinion. Don't ever work for somewhere that is going to control how much you can earn. Figure out what you're good at and just put all your effort into it. Live poor till you make it, and there you go.
This is John Joseph Checky Jr., CPA, CFP, co-founder of Checky Financial, along with,
JJ Checkett the third, also CFP. Have fun. Make it a great day.
and we enjoy interviewing folks who really enjoy their life, their livelihood, and enrich those to whom we broadcast this podcast. Have fun and be well.
Thanks, guys.